State your first name and last name and address. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move along to the approval of the minutes from May 9th, 2022. Are there any corrections to the minutes of the May 9th meeting? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 9th meeting?
Motion to approve the minutes.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much. Unfinished business, none. New business. It's the time of the year where we have to nominate the chair and the vice chair. The present vice chair, I guess, is a little late in getting here. So if he gets nominated, he's not here to accept it. So perhaps we ought to move this to the later in the meeting on the agenda so that we can give him a chance to be here if that's acceptable to everyone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business is excuse me, is a proposed operating budget presentation for fiscal year 2023. Finance Director David Eleno, the podium is yours.
All right, I'm going to jump in here and kick this off a little bit to get started, and then David will bring it all home for us with all the detailed information. But I really wanted to come here and tell you the same thing I told the commission, that our financial position has never been stronger in this town. And that's good news, figuring we're starting to move forward on some very large initiatives. Think the fire department. We're doing some transition for the debt services to get to an independent utility. So this strong position allows us to be in probably the best condition we've been in a long time. It allows us to, again, continue to work on these special projects. And it's all driven by the commission's leadership and the commitment and hardworking employees that carry that out for us. And it's a position that's allowed us to be ranked the safest city in Florida. The safest city in Florida. So we're really proud of that. Top 10 places to retire in Florida. So we continue to rank there. This is a place to be. It's a safe place to be. And we have one of the lowest tax rates in the county in South Florida. So that's good, right? So we're doing all of this and we're doing it all during this unsettled times. We'll talk and you'll see a lot with David's presentation. The property values have grown, which is a good position for us to be in because it preserves that position. If you were to think about it from the position of our reserves, so we don't have to, the budget that we are going to present to you is balanced without pledging or using any of our reserve funds. And it's continuing us to exercise the next big steps in building that fire department. So without getting to reserves, so that's good. It helps us because we're looking at, and you'll read about this in the papers, and everybody in this room is very attuned to this, that we're looking into a recession in some fashion. We don't know how deep, how long, and what that means to us, but being able to preserve that position and going into that time, it really is a good place to be. And, you know, those kind of lead us to our message for this year, which I'm really excited about, is working to enhance, Mayor, our 3 miles of paradise. So, that's really what we're working on is, you know, how do we enhance and protect the health and safety of the residents and really protect our unique sense of place and keep that 3 miles of paradise as healthy as ever. So here's kind of some of the overview. Again, we initially recognized 10.75% increase in taxable value. The property appraiser late last week updated that to 13.75%. So that's a good position for us. We're looking to reduce our tax rate this year, holding the operating flat, but continuing our strategy, that 5-year plan to reduce our debt millage to 0. So taking that next step reduces our debt service millage. So our total millage does come down a little bit. We're balancing our budget without, it says with pledge, but we haven't updated the slides, but We will not be pledging that 375 we initially thought, because we saw that again increase in the taxable value. So those slides that will update that. But again, we're not pledging any reserves. And last year we had to pledge 642,000. David will talk about the audit and how that position, our net position, actually did a lot better than we planned for. Fire rescue budget's up 13%. Again, that's a 4% increase from the interlocal agreement, which is now over $5.3 million. We're got a fire chief position in there, which we're actively recruiting now. We have the continuation of our consulting fees and design fees in that for the new station. And that's Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Joseph helping us get this fire department on the ground. And now one EMS vehicle is in the budget as well. Again, without pledging reserve. So we're doing those next big lifts, and we haven't needed to get into our reserves. Funding of salaries under the collective bargaining agreement, another big piece of that. David is projecting about 7%. Last year, we saw basically 0 to 2.5% increase. But how long does our good luck continue? We hope it continues this year, but we're guessing 7%. We should anticipate it in some level across our healthcare plans, which we will bring back to the FAB in August for your approval as we do every year. The FOP, which is the non-police union members, 3.5%. That's in their current agreement. We're in the last year of both of our agreements. PBA, which is the police, depends on what step and how long they're been with us. So they're somewhere between 2 and 8%, depending on the steps and whatnot. We are planning non-union employees to be 5% plus a cost of living adjustment to the salary table. That's in line. The county is offering 6% to its employees. A couple of the other local jurisdictions can be as high as 8%, and some are 5%. So we're in the ballpark. It seems like we're a little bit on the low side, but we're in the ballpark with our surrounding communities. And also the commission is really considering, because of the inflationary pressures that we're seeing, to do a one-time economic condition bonus or payment to employees to help. And it's a one-time that we're going to book this year based on some of our improved timing on the fire execution. We have a few dollars available in this year's budget to book that one-time payment to union and non-union employees alike. Several communities have already done that earlier in the year. And we think it's an appropriate time to do that, recognizing inflation, gas, commuting, housing, the general high cost of living in South Florida. And again, it's a one-time payment, so we don't own it moving every year forward. It's a one-time payment. David and I have found the dollars available within this year's operating budget to book it, so it doesn't hit our budget as an increase. So the commission is really going to take a deep dive on that on the 19th, and hopefully take some action on it.
What's the range on that?
So we're looking at around 5% for non-union, 2.5% for union employees. David, we have that projected probably cost us about 150,000-ish, right around in there, across all three of the funds: the building fund, water fund, and the general fund, as our employees are broken out amongst those three. And because we've delayed bringing on certain employees and reorganizing at town hall a little bit, we've been able to recognize savings within the already existing salary budgets to account for it. So we're able to handle that and do that for the employees. The commission was very receptive to the idea, and I appreciate them for doing that for the employees. I think that's it's a great recognition for their hard work through these times and staying with us, and it's kind of like a retention item too. So that's good for us. Next, this is the capital projects of the next, and here's some of the big capital projects again. EMS vehicles, we got planned. The commission approved that not to exceed 300. We're hoping it's around 275. North and south entries, there's going to be a design competition or challenge over the next 6 to 8 months with residents to come up with the best design or design concepts to help us rebuild our signs, which are falling into disrepair on the north and south end of town. We have to do some bridge repairs in Bellito per the structural engineer. So we're going to work on those items. We have to start rehabbing lift station number 2. We're also going to be working with Mr. Caruso, Representative Caruso, to see if we can't get a local grant that the legislator put aside, because the governor is really excited about water infrastructure improvements. So hopefully he'll give us some money. Maybe it's a little wishful thinking, but we're going to ask for that. And then we have a series of annualized improvements to the water treatment plant. They don't sound very exciting, but multiple frequency drives on for the wells, pumps, motors, all those things that keep the reverse osmosis plant going. They're not the sexiest of capital projects, but they're necessary for the clean drinking water we have here, award-winning drinking water. Here are some of the accomplishments, and I'm always impressed when we tell community groups this. I know the mayor does this all the time at his meetings as well. We've got an architect, a construction manager at risk. We're going into those designs as to how we're going to get the new fire station in place. We've contracted for a medical director. Thank you, Dr. Greenwald, for getting us in contact with Mr. Cohen. We've submitted our COPCN, which is our application for ALS and BLS emergency transport and rescue services with the county. That will be reviewed by the EMS Council here in July. We've closed a $5 million private loan with Synovus Bank that has an 18-month draw period on that, which helps us minimize interest costs that this board recommended and the commission approved. We've adopted a fire code. We're going to have a fire chief here hopefully in the next couple of months. And we're still on the contract audit on the city of Delray Beach's contracts. And those are like big items, not all the smaller stuff that's going in, but things that we're working on with fire. We've completed the water sewer rate study, all those other items that we moved through. We've implemented a marine unit in the police department. Police department is going through its biannual accreditation right now. We've adopted one of the first building recertification ordinance and programs in the county. And we've had our first condo pass that recertification process. We completed the overhead lighting project for all of our crosswalks. We adopted a right-of-way ordinance and program. We updated the fund balance policy. We recruited David, who's at the end of the dais with you today, and he's working to redo the finance department reorganization. He'll have an investment policy update for you shortly to improve our investment earnings. Next. And then here are some of our projects moving forward, some of the big stuff that we're looking at. Again, we're going to start building the fire station or completely build the fire station in the next fiscal year. We have to start procuring some of the station apparatus and equipment, recruit fire personnel, put those programs in place, how we're going to get and attract people, train them, start that process. We're going to formalize a lot of these operational protocols that are out there, get our medical supplies in line. We're also going to do a marine accessory structure ordinance that's coming up, town entry signs. We have 2 collective bargaining agreements that are expiring. We're going to jump into that next year. The Bellito Bridge repairs, rehabilitate well 8, some more plant equipment. We're going to improve finance and accounting department accuracy, speed, and reporting. And again, formalize all of our human resource personnel policies and procedures. Again, that's just as we grow, we bring on fire. We have to have that necessary support service structure, HR, purchasing, and the like, all IT, that's all being formalized over the next year. So basically we've got keeping our operating millage for the 4th year in a row, flat at 3.2294. We're reducing the debt service millage about 9% to 0.3581 for a combined rate of 3.875. Now here we are over the last 3 years. So we were at 3.7878 in 21. We went down this current year to 3.6225, and now we're down to 3.5875. That's a structurally balanced budget too, and adding all of the those big initiatives in play. Next.
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
Very nice report, obviously. One question I have, in past years, we had like a major sewer relining project on the works that I think was going to cost like $1.5 million over 3 years, something like that. I'm not sure exactly how it was going to be scheduled. And I don't see that up there.
Yeah, that's it may have been on the slide that moved up a little quicker, but yes, that's coming to the commission. I'm thinking in August. And what we had is we had 2 bidders and the bids came in, $500,000 higher than we anticipated. And we have worked with the bidders to figure out what did we miss? What are they seeing? And we're trying to work out a program with the apparent low bidder. And that's what we're going to bring back to the commission. And we plan to start that project latter part of this year. And we got to get it done. We'll probably start with laterals, which is the A1A crossovers. Make sure we get those done before A1A is resurfaced.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that hadn't disappeared somehow.
Oh yeah, no, it's coming. Yep.
Okay.
And before David begins, I'd just like to recognize Ron Riami, Vice Chair, has joined us via Zoom.
Everybody.
All yours.
Thank you. As you can see here, here's a chart as Marshall had indicated. This right here was the property values. Excuse me. You see there on the bottom, that's how it changed month to month. So in June, that's what the property appraiser had assessed. And then in July, they came back with these revised numbers. So you can see there that 1 year, obviously, 13.75% change in taxable values. If you take that, you look at a 5-year time horizon, 5.5, and 10 years, 6%. But very healthy taxable assessed values. As Marshall had indicated, this is the 4th year in a row that we are able to maintain the operating millage. That's the orange line, and gradually reduce the debt portion of the millage. So you can see there that we are proposing overall from 2022 to 2023, our proposed budget there, it's about a 1% decrease. All right, so now we're going to get into each of the major funds, and what you'll see as we go through this is a macro level view, and then we start to go a little bit more narrower. And so, as you can see here from this pie chart, right, our general fund revenues, 77% is ad valorem taxes. Miscellaneous revenues, those are revenues that the general fund gets from the water department or the sewer department or the building department, right, to reimburse the general fund for its overhead type of expenditures. Then you also have intergovernmental shared revenues. What's that? Well, that's stuff like the gas tax or the sales tax, things like that we get from the state of Florida. And as Marshall had said, and I underline here, there are no needs right now for pledged reserves or pulling money from our pledged reserves. And so now we're going to take a little bit, we're going to go down a little bit as far as a dive. Let me go back. So here you can see all of those there total up to the $14.075 million. Okay. So now you get into, hey, this is where the property ad valorem, estimated increase in taxes. Overall, when we compare FY 23 to 22, it's about a 6.0% increase in the budget.
Let me ask a question on that. Obviously, that's a big part of our increased revenue is the property tax increase.
Yes.
In calculating that number based upon a majority or a good deal of the folks have a 3% max increase on their taxes for homestead. Was that taken into consideration in coming up with that dollar net amount?
Yes,
that
sir.
we'll receive?
Yes. Yeah. So that's what our property appraisers do for us. They take the various homestead exemptions, they reduce that there are other discounts that get applied to that. But when they give us that property value, that's correct. That's net.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm new. Franchise fees.
Yeah.
What's made up of franchise fees?
Franchise fees are like, for example, the electric. What a franchise fee is, the electric company. They provide a service to our community in our area, and they pay us a franchise fee in order for us to allow them to have access to do that.
So is that all electric?
Yeah, well, there's electric and maybe some broadband in there.
The broadband is in there?
Yeah.
For towers and stuff?
Mhm.
Okay.
So anyway, at the end of the day, so you have where we're at with FY 22, and here's our proposed FY 23. So you're looking at about a 6%, 6.3% increase there. But again, this is the revenue side of life. That's what we're anticipating. We're pretty strong on the property taxes, right? Because we know we're going to be getting that based on what the property assessor has established. The other ones, the intergovernmental and things like that, those were based on our internal estimates as where we think we're going to land at the end of this year, as well as the beginning of next year.
The reason I asked that question is I looked over the last 6 years and coming across on the amount of dollar increases. Obviously, there's been value increase. Just want to make sure we took everything into consideration in
Yes.
getting that number. Yeah.
Yes, sir. The next slide. All right. So we looked at the revenue side of life, right? Where we're going to get our money to run the town. And now here's the expenditure side of life. So here you can see that salaries and related, that approximately is 37% of the budget there. You have your operating expenditures, which represent about 54% of your expenditures. And most people might ask, well, what's included in operating expenditures, on a government side? Well, that's professional fees, contractual services, insurance and bonds, training and development, and things like that. And then we have obviously some capital projects that we have there. And then you have your on the expenditure side is the interfund transfers. That's the money that the general fund sends to the water fund, right, to pay the portion of the debt. Now, we're going to take a little bit deeper dive, and we're going to go by department, right?
One question. On capital expenses, I gather that a lot of that 331,000 is the ambulance, is that right?
Yeah, we'll get to that. We have a page in here called the discretionary sales tax fund. And so that's where that money comes from. But yes.
All right, but I was wondering about just looking at this, and you may get to it later. Where is the money that's going to go into building the new fire department, the capital structure? Where's that in the budget?
And that's a great question. What we've decided to do for FY 23 is when we come to you with any building related expenditures for the fire department, we're going to come to you as a budget amendment. The reason why that is because right now in the phase, we're not really sure yet when construction phases will happen. And so what we will do, not only will we give you an update as to what's going on with the construction, but we'll also then come to you and ask for the draw request from the loan that we got, as well as pledging our current fund balance.
Okay, is that like a recognized general accounting way of how you do that sort of thing? Because capital projects I've been involved with before, there was like a budget, and then you'd make adjustments when you didn't
I mean,
either
ideally,
over or underspent, because you don't know exactly when your draws are going to be.
ideally, I would like to have, the bid in hand, and David and I would know exactly, but we're still moving through the design concepts to put a number in. Just, we don't know. And then because we've got these two sources of funds. And when I go back to the beginning saying not pledging reserves strengthens our ability to have more reserves. So in a sense, we went into this with a 50-50, 50% loan, 50% cash, and that's how we're going to do everything. Well, as our reserves get stronger, maybe we use less loan, right? Less interest expense incurred and use our cash. But we just don't have that number. So that's why Dave and I said, what, we'll come back. We all know we're doing this. We're all authorized to do it. Let's come back when we get a final design. Here's what it's going to cost. We'll have the stipulated sum or an estimate from Kaufman Lynn, and then we do a budget amendment. So in the action of accepting, because the commission has to accept the design. I can't build the design this. So the commission will say, yep, that's the final design. It's going to cost X. Here's how we're going to get the cash. David, make the budget amendments. Boom. And that's how we'll do it. And then we'll all know it. And it's the clean part is it's a series of communications to the community too. Like, here's what it is. Here's how much it's going to cost. And here's exactly how we're going to pay for it.
So it will be milestones versus one big fixed price
Right.
when the releases happen from Synovus, correct?
Right. That's the beauty of the Synovus piece is we could do it incrementally. So they might tell us, Kaufman Lynn might say, no, you got to get your doors ordered now because it's an 18-month lead time. The commission might say, you know what, the doors we'll pay cash for that rather than borrow the money for the doors. Maybe buying the windows or the first load of steel. We might just say, okay, we're going to pay cash for that, versus take that loan. So maybe the loan doesn't need to be a $5 million loan. Maybe it's 4.5, or maybe it's 3.5. And we have that flexibility, which is the beauty of Synovus. So that product we got.
Question?
Can I just step back to operating? It's 7.6 million and you name 4 or 5 items made up of many items. Usually the 80-20 rule works. There are 20% of the items make up 80% of the cost. Can you just give me the top 5 that make up the $7 million?
$7 million on,
The operating expenses under the general fund?
oh,
I'm sorry.
Fire is 5.4 million, 5.35. So that's over, that's about 80% of that 7 million.
Well,
right there.
fire is,
Fire's in that number.
fire's
yeah.
at 6.1 and police at 2.9.
Yeah,
That's more,
on
that's
the-
7.7 and the whole number is 7.6.
on page 15 of the slides. Are you on that?
Page
On
15.
on the slideshow? I think I can go right here, right? I think we're right there.
Okay.
And so,
Got ahead of
here-
myself.
right. And so of all the expenditures, the fire rescue department obviously is the lion's share. And of that $6 million, of that over $6.1 million, 92% of that is the contract with the city of Delray. 4% is salaries and related. When we get around to hiring the fire chief, and 4% is capital.
I might be missing something, but it's, the total is 7 million and those 2 items are 7 million. So yes, it just seems there's nothing else there unless I'm reading it wrong. I hope you're following what I'm saying.
Yeah, the 7 million is 5.3 of the fire budget is a contract. It's an operational cost. Not the personnel items, but just that fire Delray contract. We also have solid waste, which is a contract
But the
with.
police is not in that number.
No, because police
Okay.
is personnel.
You just answered my question. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So you can see here, now what we're doing here is we're breaking down the $14.075 million budget by department. And there you can see that the lion's share of that is obviously the fire rescue department.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How are we doing in terms of the deadline to convert to our own fire department? I realize there's a lot of delays. How are we looking?
We're looking good. It's just the external stakeholders. We'll have to find out in July when I think the politics begin to play out on it. We're meeting and we're ahead of all of our targets. We're ready to go. Basically, we have a fire rescue program submitted to the county, ready for approval. We know exactly what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. I have a fire chief here for you all in the next couple of months. We're on point. Kaufman Lynn, we met with them, and PGAL, our architects. We're working on those, but again, our plan is still, construction in the calendar year of 23. Everything that we're looking at, they're saying is a 8 to 12 month construction, probably on the longer side of that. So we'll be done and ready to go and open by the May 24 kickoff date. Now, if something that we don't see, politics can always twist us a bit and mess our calendar up, but it's not us. And that's the commitment I have from my team, from our consultants, is we left no stone unturned, no document incomplete. So if we do get put to the side, it's going to be purely because of politics. And that's okay, because it wasn't a staff or a technical issue. It's just some other issue that we'll have to handle. The commission, myself, our legislators, county commissioners, we'll have to figure that out if it's a truly political, but it's not going to be technical financial issue. As you could see, we're financially sound. We can cover it. We got everything in place. We've submitted all of our license requests. We got a great medical director. We have the medical protocol. Everything's in place. So we're on schedule. Let's just see if everybody else stays on schedule with us. That's outside of our control, if you will.
Okay, thanks.
The next slide for the general fund is obviously the fund balance. And here you can see the changes there in the fund balance. We've added the fire rescue department there. You can see on that line item there under our fund balance policy with the $4 million. And then by the end of 2023, which this budget will encompass, it drops down a little bit. That's because of the purchasing of the vehicle and other apparatus equipment.
But if I'll jump in there, we'll correct that because we're presenting that we don't need to do that because we got that last week addition. So
Right.
basically that'll still be 4 million when we update the slides from the property appraiser's information. So it'll still be at 4 million at the end of 23.
Right. But it is, again, it's a healthy, well-balanced, we have funds in there for the budget stabilization or the disaster recovery unassigned, as well as our commitment to the fire rescue. So now we leave the general fund side of the budget, and now we're going into discretionary sales tax. Discretionary sales tax, we get that every year. And the state of Florida is obviously healthy. Certain projects shift. And if you see on the next slide here, these right here were our list of projects of what we wanted to spend money on using discretionary sales tax. So you can see I put certain items there. We plan to complete them in this fiscal year, or if it's a new program that's going to be an FY23, we've added that here. Or if a plan was canceled, we've identified it here. But the capital projects fund is healthy, and it has a healthy fund balance that will continue to go forward. Now we get into, so we looked at the general fund, we looked at the discretionary sales tax fund. Now we're looking at the building department fund. So the charges for services are over 96% of the total revenue for this fund. And in addition to our own building department activity, we are looking at an interlocal agreement with the town of Gulfstream. And right now, preliminary, we added about $300,000 of revenue. And we also added $300,000 of cost because we think it'll be budget neutral just to help that town out. And so we've included that here, but it's a very healthy, and as you even drive down our town here, there's just a lot of building activity, and we anticipate that going into 2023 as well. And again, due to the overall health of this fund, there's no need for pledge revenues are anticipated. This is the expenditure side of the building department. You can see, let me flip to mine. So yeah, you can see about 40% is salaries and related, and then you have some operational expenses there. The operational expenses are through an organization where we outsource a lot of the inspection services. And, but you can see that we have, so we have an increase in operational costs pretty much associated with that interlocal agreement with Gulfstream. This year, or for FY23, minimal capital projects for FY23. The reason why is we completed a lot of the capital projects in that department in FY21 and FY22.
I have a question. And just to digress for 1 second, I'm trying to wrap my arms around some of this stuff. The permits on one of these pages that you had here was $50,000 for the year. Permits. Do we charge a different amount for permits for new construction other than renovation? Because 50,000 seemed low to me based upon driving up and down the street. Do we charge more for new construction?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know it off the top of my, I don't have the schedule and off the top of my head, but there's plumbing, AC, all these different categories that go into it.
Just seemed a little.
If you go to that slide, like most of the permit revenue you see is, trying to say 50,000.
That was on that's on the general fund side. That was on the general fund.
That's like
side.
planning and
That's
zoning
planning and
fees, which
zoning.
are separate
Yeah.
from
Yes.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry about that. Yeah. So again, yep, that's planning and zoning. That's part of the general fund. This is the building department. But again, very healthy. And we are anticipating that health to obviously continue.
One question.
Yes, sir.
So in this last year, as I understand it, the building department was very busy and was so successful, if we want to call it that, that they made more money than they needed to. And that since it's not allowed to be a profit-making venture, we were talking about 10% cuts in fees and so on. So as part of the new budget, are the permit fees going to be revised downward? Is that the plan to make the budget balance for next year? What do we, George, why aren't we going to have the same issue next year?
So it's hard to predict exactly how much revenue based on the cost and valuation of the work to determine the fees, but we are anticipating that we're going to recommend to the commission that the 10% discount become permanent. So we're going to lower the building permit fees by 10% permanently moving forward, recognizing the health of the fund balance of the building department and just that level of activity. So we're at this point, I know that Jeff's going to present that to the commission with our fee schedule, but to, keep that 10% in place. Permanent. Yep.
Thank you.
So next we are going on to the water fund. Okay, so we've been through the general fund, we've been through the discretionary sales tax fund, we've been through the building department fund. So now we go into the water fund. In 2001, we had RAF Telus do a rate sufficiency analysis for us. And they set out and they said, in order to have a 5 years down the road, a healthy water fund that is self-supporting, and that's the idea. When you have a water or sewer fund, is to have it to be where it's self-supportive, and it covers its cost through its rates that it charges users. That's really the goal. And so for FY23, as part of that goal, as part of that plan, there was to be a 10% rate increase was forecasted based on what the consultant had said. FY23, we're not going to have the ARPA funds that we did in FY22. And so the budget is an increase in pledge reserve to offset the reduction of the water and wastewater transfer from the general fund. But you can see here that we're going from about we're increasing the overall revenues there. That the net is only $27,000. And the reason why that is because we don't have the ARPA funds that came in for this fund, and that was $234,000. At the end of the day, we're looking at about a 0.6% increase overall in the amount of revenue. Here you can see I added a chart here. This is again looking at the revenue data. Our water base fees obviously increased based on our study. Water usage is down a little bit. Again, I only have data through the month of June when we billed. We still have August billings that we have to do, as well as October billings. But right now, just an early indication is that our usage will be down a little bit, both on the water and irrigation as compared to this time last year. But that's normal. Most of the time when there's an increase in rates, price elasticity, people usually use less, but typically they do come back to normal within the following year. Again, these were our rates. These were the changes in our rates that we've seen since 2020. Rates were adjusted, if you recall, April 1st, and then we added additional tiers. We also added an irrigation customer class. But last year, the rates were adjusted by 11%. This year, the plan is to do another 10%. And then after that is the lion's share of the increases, because we're not really, the consultant recommended only a 5% rate increase in 24, and then a 2.5% rate increase in 25. So if we hold the course and we adhere to this, the subsequent year rate increases are much less. On the water.
This, I think, is the one part of the budget that I understand the numbers the least. So when I look at this in the preliminary budget, we've got 2.9 million in charges for services. And then we've got close to 700,000 coming from reserves and another almost 1 million from the general fund, which to me means that like 40% of the money or something like that is not being covered by fees. By charges. So that doesn't seem very sustainable to me. And when we talk about, well, we've got another 5% or 10% built in over the next couple of years, just grossly eyeballing it, it doesn't look to me that that's going to cover that, where this is going to be self-sufficient. Now, I know we got bailed out for a while with the ARPA funds and all that's great stuff. And I know we have money in reserves, but I mean, presumably we want to keep some money in reserves. And I don't know, maybe at some point somebody can explain that to me a little bit better, because I've been following the water stuff. And I just don't see where it really adds up at this point. And I'm probably missing something. I'm not an accountant and I get this wrong sometimes, but that's what it looks like to me when I look at this budget. It looks like the money's coming from someplace else.
Right. And so we know that the general fund sends over money to cover the debt service. And we know that over the years, last year in FY22, the general fund sent over $1.039 million to cover debt service. This year, we've reduced that to $945,000. In the later years, in the later slides, you'll see that our debt service goes down because we pay off some notes, about $345,000 in FY24, and it comes out to be over $700,000 in FY25. That's a lot of fixed costs that we will be paying off in those latter years. And so the rate increases are necessary to keep up, obviously, with inflation, obviously, to cover our costs for capital, as well as to cover the debt service, which you'll see in two slides, that debt service starts to dwindle down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the need for increases in rates to increase revenues. I get that part. What I'm saying is, it wasn't clear to me in looking at this how that was going to cover things and make this truly independent. But I guess what you're saying is that as we continue to shift over general funds to pay down the debt, that it'll get there within the next X number of years.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's why I stayed the course. And I think what David's digging into right now for the commission, we're really looking at is we raised this price elasticity really happened to us. And we got to see if we're going to come back. What that is we had 4 billion periods where we sold less water because we raised the price. That could be an issue if the water use stays down. We're not making the money that we anticipated, or the water use goes down. We got to maybe additional changes down the road. But we're seeing it start to come back. So we're hoping that this was just exactly as David said, it's just a reaction to the pricing that eventually over time, people will start using water on a more consistent basis. But we're looking to make sure, did we miss something, or was there a bad meter out there or something? Because the water, the amount of water we sold, if we go back to that slide, it really, I mean, the chart doesn't probably show the dramatic nature of it, but we really sold a lot less water than we had in prior periods. Mm-hmm. And we're looking at that data, and then we, usually we'll see spikes, all of a sudden we'll see a high use period followed by a low use period. We had 4 low use periods adjacent concurrently. So what does that mean? But it's starting to pop back up. So when we get that August data, if it continues to move up, we could say that maybe it is truly, as David said, is just an initial reaction to the pricing, and that it's starting to rebalance in the system. So, yeah,
that's the orange line there. The orange line is consumption, right? And the blue line is the base fees. But, 2025 is our early indications as to when this turns over and the system, both the water and the sewer, become self-sufficient.
Just to add what was said here, it'd be a good idea when you said transfers from GF with general fund, but that line is for debt service. Yep. We're just putting in for debt service, I think would answer half the question. The other half is from reserve. That's to make everything tie for this year to 0.
Yes.
But if we go back 3-4 years ago, that number was much higher. As you said, we had raised rates, which obviously affects me personally because my rates go up, but that's a different issue. That's not for today. But you're right. I think over the next several years, hopefully from reserves will shrink because the debt service will go down and it will shifts. And I think we'll look, if you had 2021, 2020, that number must have been, instead of 6 digits, was over $1 million.
Yeah.
So we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, we are going in the right direction. You know, we invested in the top premier rate analysis firm, Reve. I've worked with them for
I'm familiar.
10 years. And they built a great forecast for us. And as I said, 2023, we just got to get through 2023. You know, the subsequent year rate increases are less. And you'll see here, look at here. This is what happens to our debt service. Look
That's
at
the point.
right. Our debt service goes from 1.5 to $800,000. You know, that's a lot of fixed
700,000
costs.
will come right to the bottom line. But just to answer the question here is for year 2022, the revenue was 4.8 million and the expenses were 4.9.
Right.
This year you balance it out to 0.
Yeah.
Which that's the way you should do it.
Yes.
And this will give us a real idea as we look at this fund reserve number each year. And it'll be charted and you'll see it.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it doesn't happen, then we'll worry about it then, but it could be that.
Right. And the system, if I look at the next one on the water fund side, right? I added a new matrix that the rating agencies kind of like to see. It's called days cash, estimated days cash on hand. So you can see there that, you know, right now I'm predicting that at the end of 2022, you know, we'll be at about 272 days cash on hand. Again, 2023, we're still at about 194 days cash on hand. But it does have healthy reserves. But the biggest swing really will come on the debt service side of here, right? Yeah, I mean, look at we drop off $369,000 in 24, another $369,000 just because of the way the debt was structured and when payments happen.
In the auditor's report, there is a complete
Yeah. Yeah.
schedule on what's going to happen, how the debt's going to go down over the
Right.
next, between now and 2030, which is, it's really around the corner.
Right. And so, you know, so we're gonna ratchet up a little bit of rate increases, right? Our expenditure side is going to lessen and lessen. And it's good because at the end of the day, the goal and our mission is to have a self-sustaining water and sewer fund that is, and that's why you also do a cost of service study. You want your rates to cover your costs. Now, remember, cost also includes capital related items, you know, and so yeah.
This board did review that study and
Yes.
it's appropriate. That's
Yes.
fine.
I think it was mentioned maybe a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if you or Marshall could provide some context. It was lightly discussed selling some water through bottles to try and bring in some revenue. Was this actually seriously looked at and was it plausible?
It was not plausible.
Okay.
They did look at it.
All right.
Let's not overcomplicate it. The problem is we're not selling enough water. That simple. You're looking at millions of gallons of water here that weren't sold against the original projections. It's just that simple. The original goals or objectives were obviously to seed the new pricing structure. And quite honestly, it was to get people to conserve. Well, they conserved. Okay. But the net of the whole thing is our revenue isn't where we projected it because we're not selling enough water. We hope that it's a bit of an anomaly and it will end up coming back to the curve that we had originally estimated. All of the estimates for the years moving forward were based on people not conserving. And we anticipated the only real conservation would be at the very high end users. You have to recognize, though, that I forget the percentage, it was 85-ish, 85 to 90% of water consumption is done in the condominiums. They're not going to conserve. The only thing they can do a little bit of conservation work is on the irrigation side. So hopefully that has been done and that's behind us. But the bottom line is, we got to sell more water. And this is all revenue driven.
Yes.
And there's still an additional $8 to $9 million of debt ahead of us that we've got to wipe out. So plain and simple, we got to monitor it. Hopefully, there are some issues on maybe some of the data David's looking into, try to find out if there are any issues on the data that we have. But we got to sell more water.
And also we need more people living here year round like myself.
There is
To use
not
more
a-
water.
There is not a major seasonality on usage.
I know.
We monitored a dozen of our buildings and we thought we were going to find a big seasonality, but we're not because of the base rate.
Yeah.
Everybody's paying $40 in base rate, whether they're here or they're not.
Got it.
So the gallon usage isn't driving the bus. The base rate drives the bus.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes. So that's always a good thing. Thank you. So, yeah, so, again, if we hold the course, I believe we are headed in the right direction. Keep in mind that if we go back to the Raftellus report, our rates per 1,000 gallons is right there in the middle compared to our surrounding neighborhoods. And we have some of the best water. We really do. So we're definitely blessed with that. So again, a healthy fund balance, which is great. Now we go over to the sewer fund, same idea, right? This one's a little bit different because we outsource, right? A lot of our sewer treatment cost is through the city of Delray. So again, but we did predict and we did hold fast that the sewer fund will have a 12% rate increase on this for sewer side to correspond with the 10% rate increase on the water side. But remember, we just have to get through FY23 because FY24 rate increase is projected to be 5% the following year, and then 2.5% in year 2025. So again, sewer side, because sewer often complements the water side as far as how much usage, and there's a cap limit on what we charge. We're still a little bit low on this fund here. One of the major drivers of this side of the revenue, of course, is the no ARPA funds. This fund will obviously have to pull about $212,000 from pledged reserves, but you'll see later on in the slides that it still has a healthy fund balance. Here you can see, here's a chart of just some of the revenue data that we looked at. The blue lines represent the base fees. If you recall, as part of the Raftellus rate analysis, we lowered the base fees and then we added a cap to the amount of the consumption. Again, the expenditure side of life. You can see where 90, I think it's close to 85 to 90% of the expenditures are through. Yeah, over 85% of the expenditures are for sewage treatment that is provided by the city of Delray. We've included in our budget their estimated increase already, which was, I think, a little bit south of 5%. This fund also has a healthy estimated days cash. We're at 573 days cash on hand, which is good. Because remember, our fund balance here also has to carry us through capital projects that are in the future. So we're going to need that those rate increases to carry us through. That is the last fund. I showed you, here's a budget calendar of what is left during this process. July 19th, we have our first rate hearing. August 4th and the 18th, in the month of August, we have special budget meetings. And that will carry us through the September schedule, where September 21st will be our final budget hearing on this. So I know we've answered, or we've had question and answer during it, but if you have any other questions.
So just just a couple quick questions. So first, thank you for putting the presentation together.
Yes.
I really do appreciate how detailed it is. So going back to FY 2022 accomplishments, the Marine unit, is that considered complete, the initial expenditure of that?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed that Boca Raton has a diving team. Has there been any discussion about having a diver or anything like that added in the future?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
And the reason why I said is, I don't know if we need a dive team, but we may have ocean rescue and some elements of it when we get our fire department up, that we anticipate that we will have to start doing those type of responses. We'll probably rely upon some mutual aid from time to time, depending on the type or scope of that incident, but we will have to do some of that. Yes.
Okay. All right. So it's on the
It's out there,
horizon.
yeah.
Okay, good. The crosswalk overhead lighting project, is that complete?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Last thing I think we're going to wait to do is for the A1A resurfacing to put the in-road lighting system.
Okay,
There's still
so,
a strong interest with the commission to do it. But at this point, because we didn't get the money we'd hoped during the appropriation phase, and you have to ask again, it's probably delayed it enough where we should probably wait for A1A to get resurfaced before we put them in. Just makes better timing and with less destruction of the equipment we do put in.
so I'm a little uniquely qualified to speak on this. I actually live right on a crosswalk. So when the few times the light's been broken and it flashes in my bedroom at night. But the important part here is those
Sorry about
crosswalks.
that. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's only been a few times. Those crosswalks have really made a big difference. They're really great for the town, but they're still not good enough. And I think exactly what you just said is what's needed is those reflectors on the ground, because I still see on a daily basis, people waving the flags. They press the button and then they get out there and they still wave the flags. People still don't stop. But I just want to be clear, the work that's been done is absolutely great.
Okay.
It's absolutely great. And then my last one was, if we come back in a year from now and it's a recession, housing prices are down 10%, what's the conversation going to look like as it relates to the plan that you're going to present?
That's it's a good question leading up into probably another question I'm going to hear from the commission as we move forward through this hearing process, where I believe David and I would say, if we hold course on our plan and don't overreact to a good moment, whereby you might say, let's take a big chunk out of the tax rate and significantly lower it, pledge the reserves because they're there. And then we're next year generating less revenue. And then we're back to increasing the rates. It puts us in a very reactionary position. So what we've initially stated was that by not touching the reserves in the budgeting, this is just our best guess as we move forward, we preserve that position. So if we see in the next year or two, housing prices, I'm hoping they don't take a big drop again. I don't want to see 2008 2.0. I've already had that time in my career. I'm hoping it's just a small bounce or a holding of value, and that our rates and then our property values kind of flatten and don't increase that much. When we go back to that trend, that 10-year trend pattern, then when we do some of these big lifts, we have the reserves cash on hand to make it happen. And so we don't have to have a bouncing of a millage rate every year because we're, we could do this, let's cut it significantly, or then we have to come back and then raise it significantly. That usually drives residents and voters pretty crazy, makes commissioners uneasy. So, I think we're in a very good position to handle a recession. How big it is depends, and the scope we don't know yet. But everything I'm reading, we're looking at one. How long it lasts, we don't know. Hopefully it's small. Again, we're a little bit more resilient being on a barrier island, only so much of it. Our prices and usually do withstand those type of pressures a little bit better than other communities. But I think our strong financial position, David will get into the audit, where our net position is really strong, that if we can keep ourselves from, digging too deep into the reserves to satisfy our thirst for a big tax reduction, I think we could handle a recession quite easily and move through it and not have a significant problem or derail any of the initiatives that the commission has been working hard on over the last few years through our strategic planning process, putting that fire department in place. We'll be able to do it without much turbulence along that journey. So, but again, I'm sure that conversation will happen at the commission level, that there'll be discussion that should we bring that millage rate down a little bit more? I don't know how much or where that thirst is with the commission, but I'm sure that is going to discuss it. And that's why David and I are saying right now, we are really strong and can handle it. But if there may be, a desire in some further reduction, and we'll have to address it. But a recession we can handle. Again, it depends, unless it's multiple year and it's really gnarly, then it could be a problem.
Thank you for being cognizant of it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much for that. Excellent. Mr. Mayor.
David?
I have a question for the committee, for your board. So I'd like to hear from each of you, following up on what's been said. Because the commission will discuss it. So I'd like to get your input. And that is, should we stay with the plan that was presented that basically zeroes out, which is a great plan, and we slightly drop off a little bit on our mill rate, which is just basically holding, operating, and dropping the debt service a little bit? Or should we drop the operating mill rate a little bit and pledge some reserves? We've pledged reserves virtually every year to balance our budget, and fortunately have not used them. I can argue either side of that debate. So I'd like to hear from your group on what you think.
Okay, I'll offer my opinion and then we'll go around.
However you want to do it, Chairman.
My opinion is to leave it as stated. If for any reason we come in better and we go more into reserves with the unknown of what's going on economically, I'd be on the conservative side.
Leave it as it is.
Yeah,
Leave it as it is.
that would be my opinion.
And so I would second that, leave as is. I think, based on the current economic environment, there's no real justification in my mind to lower it.
Yeah.
Okay. We are in a recession already, by the way.
Yes.
David?
I would leave the general millage rate as you've indicated in the budget. I've had concerns that I've brought up already concerning water and sewer. And I mean, that's not reflected in the general millage rates. But I think that's something that needs to be looked at on an ongoing basis. I mean, the way
It
we-
is. It
Yeah,
is.
the way we structured it was a year, a trial. Let's see how it goes. All that, great. I'm all in favor of that, but I'm not sure it's, again, I was reassured somewhat, but not completely, and I'm sure it's an ongoing process.
We're definitely concerned about it, and it's being analyzed.
But the general millage rate, I think the approach that you're taking is excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Chairperson Stern, Member
I'll get-
Riami.
Yeah, I'll come to him now. Let's go. I'm going around. I'll go around. I'll be with you in a sec. I won't forget you. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll be a little different. I'm a financial conservative on financial side for 50 years and what I did for a living. We all see something on the horizon. We are very fortunate to have a strong financial balance sheet, rainy day fund, whatever. But I sat here last year and voted against taking that much out of the reserves for the fire. And everybody said, there's a good reason why we could take 4 million out and put it aside. Our town is unique but it's unique because of the wealth of it. That's a very general term, and I'm not going to define it. The ability for us to turn on a dime is not strong in the sense we are 2.5 miles of built area. We've been very fortunate that the values have gone up. I could sell my unit for twice what I paid for it 10 years ago. It all happened in the last 3 years. That's great. It's not going to continue. That's me talking, not the economy for Island Beach. It might not be the truth. I would feel more comfortable if we try to squeeze more back into the $4 million we put aside to recoup some of it. We only have unassigned about 2.7 million when we had more than $4 million a year ago. I'm all for doing what we're doing with the fire department, but we have to look ahead. And that one of my questions I was going to ask at the end is have we done a kind of pro forma financial statement for 2024-25 under a what if scenario? Get a look, see what happens. There's just so much we could build, so much we could renovate that has to start sliding. My building, 20 apartments have turned over and each one spent $150,000 in renovations. And some people flipped it and made 20% on a flip after 6 months. Oh, that's great. Because when they flip it and the price goes up, the taxes on that unit goes up. That's happening now. It's been happening for a couple of years. I was surprised when I moved here 10 years ago and my taxes, what I was told was $2,000. I got my first bill was $5,500. Well, because of the value in the apartment. That's fine for us. But how long can that continue when we're limited? We cannot say there's 22 acres at the end, let's sell it and to a builder and he could build or fill our reserve coffers. Things like that aren't going to happen. Should we consider something that would add something without hurting anybody, we're doing it because the values went up, the dollars coming in are greater. Good. We didn't do anything to do that other than being a great place to live. So I'm getting a little windy on this. That's all I'll
I
say.
don't know where you're going.
Where I'm going is saying to consider what I'm saying, looking out 2 years from today, a year from today, where our reserves are being used to carry us like it was in 2008, 9, 10. And I made a presentation a few years ago, and before you forced me to come back on this committee, I'm just kidding, of course, that what it was then versus what it is now. And we've done a great job, but happened a lot by the economy, not by us doing anything because we're limited on what we can do. But if we do something now, it could do, I'm not going to explain what, because I really don't know where we could gain $1 million or $2 or $3 million to put into our reserves for future use to make up for the, we have a loan for $5 million and we have a top off at 9 or 10 million. Marshall, is it $10 million or $9 million we have agreed, we've voted on for
10
the
million.
10. So there are things that are going on now into the next few years that could create a situation for us which is much different than it is today. So it's something to consider, nothing other than consider it, make sure we're aware of it, and put together, as I kept for my company's little black book of the what ifs. I just put it aside. You don't like starting out from ground zero with something dramatic happens, and there's nothing more dramatic than what's happened to the economy since January 1st in the history of this country, just about. Stock market being down X% is the big key to what I'm talking about. So it's just my thought process, which worked well for me over the years, to say, yeah, we're doing great. Our sales were up 45% last year. Our cost margins are X. We moved some of our manufacturing to cheaper places other than the United States, which I didn't
Okay.
like doing it. But
Thank you.
is it going to be done or not? I'll stop there.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Ron Riami, you're
Yes. If we all, the Bulls and the Bears and the Crystal Ballers, it'd be great. Wouldn't it be if we all knew what the hell was going to happen? I think we should keep it with the way we have the plan going forward. 2008 was a whole different circumstance that occurred. I don't see any reason to change it at this point. And, you know, speculating like this is just a waste of time. You know, keep it the way it is, make adjustments later. It's the same thing with what might happen to building the fire station. You know, it's good to keep it off the books in a sense right now until it's determined what it's going to look like, what the cost is going to be, and then you can budget for it, et cetera. So playing a game of what ifs is nice, but there's no reason to change today what you've already put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does that answer your?
Yeah, sure does.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move along now to the presentation of the comprehensive annual financial report, and I'll turn it back over to David.
Thank you. Yeah, so to start off, you know, their opinion page on page 1, that's what the auditors, that's really what they do. They render an opinion, and it's a good opinion. You know, the above referenced financials present fairly in all material respects and perspective of financial position and government activity. So we went through the audit process, you know, as required. We needed to get it by June 30th. And next year, we will not be cutting it that close. You have my word on that. And of course, you know, in the back, the very, very back of the audit is the management's recommendations. It's called the report to management. We know what we have to work on. Last year of this relates, we changed softwares mid-year. We went from a Munis accounting type of system to a BS&A, which was a good move, an excellent move. And, you know, obviously there were some challenges in that. And, but at the end of the day, we'll move forward. We've already got things in place for me and my staff to make sure that generally accepted accounting principles are followed. And we do it every month, and we present financial reports when needed. And at the beginning of our slides, that was one of my commitments to Marshall, was that, you know, increase accuracy, increase speed, and do things on time when they're supposed to be done. And staff is already moving in that direction. So I'm happy about it. Here to answer any questions that you may have.
Question.
I gather you're comfortable with what's going on. Is there anything that we as the Financial Advisory Board should be particularly concerned with as we read through these reports? I mean, I was a little bit concerned about, I forget how it was phrased, but, you know, sort of money floating around in the water department. And I gather some of the billing and collecting processes need a little shaping up. Is that fair? And are you convinced that there's a good handle of that? Do we do all that in-house, or is some of that outsourced?
We do it all in-house, and some of the concerns brought by the auditors are carried forward for multiple years. We had some accounting problems. We just didn't have the right skill sets. So we got a CPA that has the right skill sets, and we're deploying those skill sets to build a team with the right skill sets that can handle accounting. And we are now seeing the correction of those poor practices that we had been using for a while. So that's really, I can't imagine next year we're going to see any issues, because a lot of it was just in-house timeliness, and it was all accounting focused. And those have been, step day one, because David was our consultant for a while, before we got him to join the dark side with us. And, all those practices are now in place. And so I'm quite pleased that we shouldn't see those moving
Good.
forward.
Oh, that's reassuring.
That's
I've
right.
seen that elsewhere where you get really good operational people, but when it comes to some of this stuff, not so much. So.
Yeah.
And that was plaguing us. And I'm glad we finally got our arms around it, or had the opportunity to get our arms around it. And software helped a little bit, but bringing David in to kind of having a real accountant, it really helps.
To expand on that, what you mentioned, report to management, it talks about a material variance in the billing per what's on the ledger. Two things come to mind. One is, was that material enough for an audit listed adjustment? Did they adjust that books to actual?
Yes.
And how much was that?
I don't know how much. I'm trying to think of which one.
It says there was a material variance, and if there's a material variance, the auditors are mandated to propose an adjustment to the books and records for that amount.
I thought my best recollection was, I think that was around $74,000.
Is it 74,000 of cash unaccounted for?
No, that one there was the fact that we needed to have a budget amendment done. And unfortunately, a budget amendment was not brought forth. We had done the budget amendment in our system internally to make sure that we had enough budget. But where I failed was I failed to bring it to the board to get their okay. The source of that revenue was fees. The building department was going gangbusters, and obviously there was more insurance that expense allocated to that fund. And so we needed to do some journal entries to push that over.
So it's just moving around. It wasn't 75,000 unbilled or billed?
No.
Okay,
It was just,
strictly internal,
yeah.
but
absolutely.
still it's a weakness in the.
Yeah, and the
that's-
and the weakness there was the fact that I failed to bring it to the board to get them to do a budget amendment to increase, I think it was insurance and things like that, other costs in that department.
Mhm.
And that was on me, and it won't happen again.
So you never like to see audit findings, if I can jump in, you never like to see audit findings that continue on from year to year,
Mhm.
right? And I don't recall, I think when I joined the board last year, I don't recall reviewing this. Would it be fair for us as a board, each time we meet, to review an update on the status of the findings from the annual review? So we can ensure that the town manager is able to continue to proceed to resolve these?
Well, it seems to me by reading the report, I didn't fall asleep. I stayed up for reading it. This is the only thing that stood out because I read the opinion. The opinion is clean. So this wasn't big enough to say it's going to be a dirty opinion. It said everything was fine. This stood out that I've been there. I know what it's about and what they do about it. And it wasn't significant enough for them to change their opinion from a clean opinion to something other than that.
Right.
It wasn't even noted in their opinion. So I just was curious. It was internal, was a cash, and I think I understand
Yeah.
what occurred. So I'm quite familiar with things like this.
Okay. So for the remaining other items, do we have concerns? Do we want updates throughout the year? Do we want to revisit this?
Well,
I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think any of these little things, even if they don't arise beyond a certain level, are quality issues.
Yep.
And part of our job should be looking at overseeing, if you will, quality in the financial area. So I think that it's a reasonable request for this group to be updated in terms of any variances that come about and what's being done with them.
And the reason why I bring it
I
up is,
agree.
yeah, I mean, I know in
And it can
business,
be a
you can,
2-second item.
Sure.
yes,
Let's-
yes.
Let's add that to the agenda,
Sure.
just for an update on any of those
Absolutely.
things. I think
Thank
that
you.
would be
Besides
appropriate.
that, what, we could add it to the quarterly report.
Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good
Absolutely.
idea.
And, part of the report to management has the management's response, which is what I wrote in respond to them. And you'll see that, yes, we concur. Here's why it happened. The real proof in the pudding will be this time next year,
Yes.
right? That will be, because when you don't see any, that's the mark that we're striving for. And that's my commitment. And again, all these things that the audit identified, I always check with myself and my staff to make sure that, no, this isn't an issue anymore, right? No, this is, because to be honest with you, September 30th will be here before we know it, right? And I'll be working on the audit, getting books ready for final closeout, December. We'll hand it over to the auditors. Things will move much quicker. We're going to be on time, and it's going to be accurate. And that's my commitment to this board and to the town, and obviously to my employer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? Thank you very much. We're going to go back to item 8 on new business, and that's the nomination of chairperson and vice chairperson to serve 1 year ending June. At present, I chair. Ron Riami is the vice chair. Does any discussion, any nominations at this point? Somebody like to nominate, make a motion to continue the two of us in the present position?
Two officers in their current positions.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Ronnie, you accept?
Yes.
And I will accept. Thank you very much. I think, do we need a roll call vote on that?
You can do unanimous. You don't need a roll
Okay,
call.
all in favor, please?
Yes.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. We'll move on from there. Are there any board member reports? Anybody have anything else to add?
I just have a question. I mean, would there be any benefit? And I'm not sure how we as a group are going to be, how or if we're going to be looking at the budget any further before it's approved, or whether we should have some sort of just a general motion to. at least
Yeah, in
say that-
August, we'll come back, present it to you along with the health insurance bids that we get. So those will come back to you. You have an opportunity to take another look at it, and we'll have follow-up from commission, further commission guidance. And then also, we are starting the process for a new auditor. I should have jumped in when we were talking about the audit. And last time the FAB was the board that made the recommendation on the auditor. So that process will be kickstarted here shortly, because we need to start the audit here in a few months. So we're going to go out to bid for those services. And then we'll bring it to the FAB for the finalists and go that direction.
Which,
Do you have anybody, is there any reason why we're changing orders? I think.
Yeah, there is.
There is.
Yeah, it's a good time too. I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the suggestion,
Yeah, I'll leave
I
it
think
there.
the suggestion the last time was more that just as a matter of form, that periodically you should take a look at what's out there, rather than a criticism at that time, certainly of our particular auditor. So I'm glad that that process is taking place.
announcements. August 2nd, 1:30 Town Commission meeting. August 4th, 12 p.m. Town Commission special meeting. August 16th, 1:30 Town Commission meeting. Now, we also have on the calendar here for August 18th is a tentative Financial Advisory Board meeting. That was changed from the tentative August 25th. We're going to have to look at that date and get consensus. I'm going to be out of the country for that period of time, for the 2 weeks, starting the August the 8th. So we'll look at that, and if we can come up with a date that works, fine. Otherwise, we'll have the vice chair run the meeting. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, this meeting will be adjourned at 1:04 PM. And thank you, everybody, for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.